Right. He also don't get the same cookies. Harvey says it all the time. It's not the same. Not the same.
Rabbi, every week you change the shear?
Ready?
Yeah.
Every week we change
The cookies.
Yeah.
Beautiful. It's on? Okay. Good morning. Thank everybody for coming. I'd also like to thank one of the members of the share who randomly, we live in a society, everyone sends other people email. And, I get a lot of email, a lot of different things. But someone sent me a picture, look at this. I looked at it, I'm like, great topic for a share. Now, I was already thinking about the topic to share for a different point. I'll circle back to that perhaps later in the share. But the title of today's share is the Aron Kodesh and Halacha. And you think about it through the ages, the Aron Kodesh, the place where we keep our most sacred object, a Sefer Torah, has always been a centerpiece in a shul. And, you sometimes have these tours of these old shuls. Unfortunately, the shul's not really functioning, but you'll see such exquisite, amazing design in the Aron Kodeshes. It was always a centerpiece of the shul. Discussed recently when we were in Eretz Yisrael. How many amazing Aron Kodeshes do we see? We were just talking about before. There's this famous golden Aron Kodesh in the Beis Medrash of Panovich. That Beis Medrash that the Panovich Rav built, literally, Toch de Dibur, throes of the Holocaust. And he says, I'm going to rebuild Torah on top of this mountain, and it's going to be a huge yeshiva. People scoffed at him. He said, you're dreaming. And he famously said back, I might be dreaming, but I'm well awake. And he built that gorgeous golden Aron Kodesh, or Hashkacha Pratis, as I was just told, that he happened to find it piece by piece, laying there in Eretz Yisrael, smuggled out of Europe. We were in Tzfas, went to the Beis Yosef's shul, Yosef Cairo, Machaber the Shulchan Aruch. We'll read his words in a moment. Very interesting, definitely fits the city of Tzfas. I would say a more artistic, colorful Aron Kodesh, right there in the middle of the city, across from the Granat Kolo, right? Amazing, beautiful piece. Went to Bells, the grandeur of a huge Beis Medrash, huge shul. Was it 10,000 seats? And you have this huge Aron Kodesh with artistry, wood, and gold, Shavisi Hashem Nagdi Samid. Amazing pieces. Anyone remembers, I remember here in Yeshiva, in the early years in Miami, they had a very distinct Aron Kodesh. Some people might remember. The Aron Kodesh literally looked, on the side were like two scrolls. It looked like a Sefer Torah. And in the middle, it looked like a cloth. And you sort of opened the cloth to take out the Sefer Torah. Those who remember that old Aron Kodesh here in Yeshiva. Many. Another one that resembled Queen's Aron Kodesh. All different beautiful displays. And perhaps to top all of them, we sent it out as a Maramakom on the group. They just completed before Shavuos this Aron Kodesh in Yeshiva's Ateret Shlomo, which is a yeshiva that the Rosh Yeshiva's name is of Shalom Ber Sorotzkin. I believe he's considered the biggest fundraiser in, the firm world. It might be the entire Jewish world today. This man has a network of yeshivas and kolim throughout Eretz Yisrael. He's constantly traveling the world, and he's a geschmacka personality. And he's literally one man is raising. It's a crazy number. I would say 8 to 9 digits every year. Wow. tens of millions of dollars. If not, I think he might be up to $100 million. This man is a super fundraiser. He's traveling all the time, and he's supporting, thousands of people there in his kollel and his yeshivas. So one of his prized yeshivas is there in Rishon LeZion. I haven't been there yet, but it's on my hit list. And gorgeous, gorgeous base medrash. Huge chandeliers, like in base medrash. But they built an Aron Kodesh, which, as we were just mentioning before, it's not clear exactly the price tag, but pashtos, probably over $10 million. This Aron Kodesh spans a whole, you call it Mizrach font, where it has golden doors, 2 matching golden menorahs, decorative menorahs on the side. Just a huge, huge, huge Aron Kodesh. It's interesting. For the unveiling of the Aron Kodesh, they had a Chnas Sefer Torah. Wouldn't you imagine for such a big, huge Aron Kodesh, the Chnas Sefer Torah, the Sefer Torah was this big. You didn't need that big, you do an event like that, maybe you should have 10 Sefer Torah. Okay, now we understand why you need such a big one. They had one just that big. Okay. That's Hashem, there'll be more. But what I would like to talk about, first and foremost, are the halachos involving an Aron Kodesh. And I'm going to circle back. I'd like to talk about, most people who see that news item of this fancy Aron Kodesh, $10 million, you could build a lot of yeshivas for $10 million. $10 million sounds like a lot of money for an Aron Kodesh. And the design and everything seems very, you might use the words over the top. I'd like to, see if we could explain a little bit where such an idea, such a grandiose Aron Kodesh, where it might come from. So tune in. That's one of the things we're going to talk about in the show. But more specifically, if you think about it, and I'll go around the room, I'm sure people have what to add. If I gave a list, what items might you find in an Aron Kodesh other than regular kosher Sifrei Torah? What would you say?
The breastplate.
Okay, good. The ornaments of the Sefer Torah. Crown, breastplate. Good.
Yad.
What else have people seen over the years
Yad.
put into an Aron Kodesh?
Yeah.
Okay, the yad.
Especially covering both the glass.
Right? What for the Haftarah?
Sefer Haftarah.
Cloth for laning Haftarahs, right? Shuls that use a cloth to lane the Haftarahs, the Megillas. You might sometimes see them in an Aron Kodesh.
That's 35, all the cloth.
What else?
All the Megillas.
All the Torahs are out.
A chumash, the Torahs are out. Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that.
And the things.
Anything else people have seen in an Aron Kodesh?
Combination.
A combination? The lot.
Yeah,
It's usually
the lock.
Yeah.
If you're in a high crime
Yes.
neighborhood.
Anything else? I thought of a few other things.
From the side, I have the rabbi lollipops.
Has anyone seen them put the pushka in the Aron Kodesh?
Generally not.
I've seen pushkas being put in Aron Kodeshes.
Talesim, pushkas.
Right?
That is because they want to share the
You've
law.
seen Talesim?
Lock is in.
to put money in.
Anything else people have seen in Aron Kodeshes?
The Gabai's box with the names of all the.
You saw that in Aron Kodesh?
So if you don't have a drawer at the Pima, then
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always lit up.
Huh?
The inside of around quarters is always lit up.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's funny. You talking about the fact that the inside of Aron Kodesh is lit up, right? Yeah, someone had to put a light in there. So I've seen people in Aron Kodesh. But yes, in Aron Kodesh, there are a lot of things, right? I've seen maybe slichus booklets or eicha booklets put in kiddush booklets put in Aron Kodesh.
extra modules for.
Now we could talk about, is it different, the Aron Kodesh part itself? Maybe sometimes draws underneath Aron Kodesh, bottom of Aron Kodesh. What about the parochuses. If you have different parochus, Yom Narayim,
Mantles also.
you've seen those put in mantles. Okay, so I would like to get to what exactly is the heter for these things, right? You don't see them on top in the Aron Kodesh, but sometimes you find on top of the Aron Kodesh, people all throw their lulavim, oshanos. Okay, so there. Sometimes you'll find in Aron Kodesh is a multi-purpose, storage. And I would like to go through today. Is there a basis for that? Is that allowed? Okay, we had a lot of good examples of what you might find inside an Aron Kodesh. And I'd like to understand, is that allowed, not allowed? What's the status of an Aron Kodesh? So, for that, I would like to explore, we mentioned before, the Beis Yosef, the Shulchan Aruch, Arachayim Siman Kuf Nun Daled. I want to go through first what he writes, what's written in Shulchan Aruch, Mishnah Berurah, and then there's a lot that's beyond the Mishnah Berurah. There's a lot of issues discussed, not directly in the Mishnah Berurah, but within the poskim. I think are very important, very relevant that we'll deal with today. Yes.
Connection to the parish. Could they cause that carry the Aron?
Okay. Yeah. Good point. Right. Yeah. Parshas also talks about the carrying of the Aron. Yeah. And there itself is very interesting because what did we find was put in the Aron? The luchos, the yesh omrim, very good. The shivrei luchos, the second luchos, the first luchos that Moshe Rabbeinu shattered, and Mordechai, very good. There also brought in Chazal that in Tzenes Mun, they had a jar of gefilte fish, a jar of mun.
No,
That was
it was worse right?
that was put in the Aron. Very, very interesting point. Where does that come from?
Still just as good now.
You
as
could
it
put
was
it in
then.
Tzenes Mun in an Aron?
Or just as bad.
Huh?
Tomato, tomato.
Okay, very, very good. So let us begin with the Shulchan Aruch. Now that we touched on the Torah and some interesting stuff. This is in Siman Kuf Nun Daled, which the title is Dinei Tashmishi Kedusha. Things that are used for holy things. Tashmishi Kedusha. Things which are used for Kedusha. You go Tik Shel Svarim. Now, Tik is not an easy word to translate. Anyone here want to give us a try?
6.
Huh?
6.
Container.
Container is probably a good word, but what exactly does that mean? A container of svarim, mezuzos. A mezuzah is easier. Mezuzah means, mezuzah itself is the scroll that we have on our doorpost. You will sometimes find houses where, what do they have on their doorpost? Just the scroll itself.
No case.
Right? No real case. Now, the least you'll have, it's wrapped up in some type of solvent, which you need for protection. But really, obviously, ideally, that's not, really it's kedai for a person to have some type of plastic or whatever.
But when they have there's a space,
Wrap.
a space in the doorpost that's been hollowed out.
Oh, something's
like
with
in
that.
Yerushalayim.
Ooh, very good. Right, so Mamash put it in the doorpost.
Yeah.
Okay, right. That itself, in the doorpost itself, very interesting, is protecting it. And
It's not termites.
yeah. So a tik shel mezuzah, that means your mezuzah case. That's tashmish kedusha. Urtzuos tefillin, and your straps of tefillin, those are viewed as tashmish kedusha. Just for the record, your tefillin box, the outer box that you take off and you put on your tefillin, right? That would not necessarily have this din of tashmish kedusha. Not, right? It's only
The play.
right.
talking about the bias itself.
The bias itself is the tick, right? The bias itself is the container. Your tefillin boxes that you take out, those are not. For example, someone once told me, saw somebody putting tefillin on somebody, but bad story. Yeah, well, let's just say it wasn't trained people, and they were
put it on with the box. Yeah,
putting it on with the boxes.
I've seen that.
Not a good idea. Okay.
What about the little cover on the box?
Yeah, same thing.
Is that no kedusha with that? Or?
Seemingly not, right? That would be a tashbis shana. We'll talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
What that status is. The ergo shenosibol sefer Torah chumash.
To apply because there's a comma after umezuzah.
Yeah, right. No, it's taken specifically by Svarim mezuzahs. Ergo shenosibol sefer Torah. Ergo is literally is like a chest that you put a sefer Torah in. Ol chumash. The kisei shenosin love sefer Torah, or chair that you would rest the sefer Torah on. Sounds like sort of like a bima or something they would use like that. These are v'lin shetol lifnei ha'hechal, or these hangings that you have in front of the hechal. Yesh behem kedusha, mitzarach leganza. They have kedusha, and when they're no longer using them, they have to be put in geniza. They can't be just thrown out. They have to be properly taken care of. So first and foremost, you see from here a nafkamina of something being a tashmish kedusha. We'll see in the Mishnah spells out another nafkamina, but it has kedusha, and you have to treat it well. So an egos that you keep a sefer Torah, literally again the chest that you keep a sefer Torah in, that has kedusha. Now let's read the Ramah for a moment. The Ramah writes, "V'davka hadavar sheminicha mem davar kedusha ba'atzmo lepamim oshes nas lekavod." It's specifically the thing that you're placing the davar kedusha in at times, or that it's made for its kavod. They go on mechasa shal krashim sol svarim. Aval also mechasa shu lishmar also. Mechasa shal krashim lo mikri tashmish. I didn't put this all down. So it's something we'll talk about here. It has to be used a lot. It has to be used a lot. Now, I didn't put this on the sheets. The Ramah continues. Hine Haga Yesh Omrim. So Haga and Haga. Tilo Mikri Aron Kodesh Elin Kimin Ergosh in Asirak Kavod Torah. It's only if you have a chest where the purpose of it is for Kavod Torah. When you say something's for Kavod Torah, that means it's to beautify it. It's to honor the Torah. Avo Aron Habonoi Bechoma Shenas L'Shmira. But if you have an Aron which is built into the wall for protection, Lo Mikri Tashmisha Kedusha. Okay, we're going to come back to this. But the Ramah already puts down an important idea. There's a difference if something is made for the kavod of the Sefer Torah or something is made for the shmira of the Sefer Torah. Now, obviously, everyone's minds are thinking about, Rabbi, that means there's a difference if we have an Aron Kodesh, a regular Aron Kodesh, versus if we have a safe. I know Shul recently just got a safe for the first time. Does that change the whole makeup of what we call an Aron Kodesh? Tune in.
And the safe's not so simple because you can have a safe that goes in and out, then it's just for protection, or you can beautify the safe, which now makes it more like the Aron Kodesh.
Very good point.
Basically, it's built in. Right?
Yes. So we're going to read some Mishnah Berurahs over here, just to get a perspective. The Mishnah Berurah explains. Let's do the first one is Vav, right underneath over here. Tashmishe Kedusha. He says, Hainu da'af Tashmishe mitzvah kaimalan b'simul chafal d'la'ach shavim mitzvah mutter l'zarka. There's a difference between something used for Kedusha and something used for a mitzvah. Very important distinction. You could use, I'll give a simple example, an esrog box. How do you define that halachically? That's a box on an item that you're using for a mitzvah. A lulav holder. That's a box, or whatever you want to call that, right? That you're using for an item of a mitzvah. That's not what we're talking about over here. Because those things have a lower level of holiness. Because that's only used for a mitzvah. Don't get me wrong. It's a mitzvah and it's chashav. But there's a big difference between that and what you call tashmishe kedusha. Right? The examples we saw here, right, with Sifrei Torah, mezuzahs, tefillin, stam. Right? That has innately more kedusha. It's not just a mitzvah. These are specific items that we created to fulfill the dinim of mezuzah, the dinim of tefillin, the dinim of Sifrei Torah. So those are tashmishe kedusha, and that has a stronger din. And one nafkamina we saw was, okay, after you're finished with them, then you have to make sure to put them in geniza. Mishnah Berurah brings a little bit later, a second nafkamina is also you can't use it for a degrading purpose. There's that, and this is going to come up very big. That item that you're using, let's talk for a second, you have some type of mantle, right? A covering on the Sefer Torah. You can't use that, to...
Wash your car.
Yeah, I don't want to go that degrading, but you can't use that, to wipe something off,
Polish your furniture.
right?
Just a tablecloth.
A tablecloth, right?
Yeah.
These type of things,
How about a holocaust?
yeah, right.
Looks like a mantle.
Right.
The blue velvet.
So that you can't do.
Where would something like the silver crown for the Torah come in? It's just used for a hindur. It's not used. It's not really a.
Very good question. How do you view a crown of a Sefer Torah? So let's get to that in a second. If you look in the next line, you're really on point, Rabbi Berger. Right there, you see the first of those wide lines, middle line by the period says "V'davka tashmish kedusha atzma." We're only talking about something which is used for kedusha itself. Avadavar mishamish tashmish kedusha, but something that serves a tashmish kedusha, a secondary step. V'hu nikra tashmish tashmish, ein bo kedusha, u'mutar l'shtamish b'hem afilu ba'odim kayom. And you can use it even when they're still in use. So it's going to depend how we define these things. Is this viewed as directly a tashmish kedusha, or is it one step removed? It's serving something which is a tashmish kedusha. So I'm not going to directly answer your question yet, but you already see there's different categories. Yes.
It appears that the common denominator for the Kedusha item is something that is written. And,
Yes,
and if you have a mantle for Torah, if you write a pasuk on it, does that change its level?
Interesting. The Poskim do talk about writing psukim on things, not so pashut. Say, you have a wedding invitation. Sometimes people write a full pasuk. It's trickier than shameless issues, or even without shameless issues. Writing a pasuk gives it a more kedusha. But I'm trying to limit the scope of today's discussion directly on the kedusha coming from a Sefer Torah, Aron Kodesh, the like. But okay, that's a very good point. I want to read one other Mishnah Berurah for now. watch my clock, see what, yeah, okay. So, the Mechaber talked about this chest you're putting a Sefer Torah in. So, I want to show you what the Mishnah Berurah writes. It's a little funny, the language. But you see the Mishnah Berurah on the top of the page. He writes, this is a chest that's used, you put a Sefer Torah in. Kamash Malan, the Mechaber is teaching us, you shouldn't say, when it comes to a chest, it comes to an Aron Kodesh, you're putting it in, don't say we're putting in there just to protect the Sefer Torah and not for honor. And you might think that an Aron Kodesh does not have a din of Tashmish Kedusha. No, the Mechaber is coming to teach you an Aron Kodesh has a din of Tashmish Kedusha. An Aron Kodesh is not just something for Shmira, it's something for Kavod. And therefore it fully gets a din of a Tashmish Kedusha. Okay, then he talks a little bit about Svarim.
I mean, how can it not? If last week we were talking the entire share is about Pisconesis. I mean, we're sure though.
Oh, well, okay. You know, there's Kedusha, you're right, in the entire shul.
Right.
But I'll give an example, right? We do this all the time, right? Sometimes there are things you could do inside the shul. You have a meal in the shul.
Sure.
You know, there's different levels of Kedusha. The Kedusha of a shul is its own Kedusha. Here, this is, in some ways, even more strict.
Right, I'm saying the Aron is
Yes.
Aron is more strict.
Yes. Now, the Mishnah Berurah asks a very interesting question. Okay? So far, what we've gleaned is there's a concept called Tashmisha Kedusha, things that are used for Kedusha, and they have a couple major nafkaminas. You have to, even after their use, you have to put them in Geniza. You can't just throw them out. And secondly, you have to be very careful what you use it for. You can't just use it for something else. Now, we also said, Rabbi pointed out, not everything is categorized as a Tashmish Kedusha. There are some things which are viewed as a Tashmish. So let's think about it. I have a Sefer Torah. What's the first rung of kavod that I'm giving to the Sefer Torah? The first thing is the mantle. Every Sefer Torah is covered with a covering, a mantle, right? Beautiful covering. That mantle for sure is a Tashmish Kedusha. Now, when I put that Sefer Torah in the Aron, shouldn't that be a Tashmish Kedusha? It's a secondary point. In other words, I'm adorning the Sefer Torah with the mantle, the covering. You could argue even the breastplates and the crowns, it's all directly touching and on the Sefer Torah. The Gart also. All of that, everything touching the Yad, you could argue, all those things are adorned on the Sefer Torah itself. But you look at an Aron Kodesh, that's for sure one step removed, isn't it? The Aron Kodesh is, okay, I'm putting it into this protective layer. So does that have the same din as a mantle?
This isn't going to be the direction of the answer, though.
Huh?
But this is not going to be the direction of the answer.
You know, we like building up the questions.
But this is not going to be the direction of the answer.
Okay.
The outside Sefer Torah are connected, so what's its level? Is it part of...
Oh, no, that's for sure. The Asay Sefer Torah are probably part and parcel of, yeah.
So then they're not covered and they're touching directly.
No.
And they're sitting on...
That might be the Sefer Torah itself. But you have the Sefer Torah, and then you have the protective layers, or not, I should say protective layers.
Dressings.
The kavod layers, the covers.
The Aron isn't the Tashmish of the cover, it's the Tashmish of the Aron. It just happens to be covered.
Okay. So that might be the pshat. If you look, the Chavetz Chaim writes, "Va'after bi'arnu shenos nimbo Sefer Torah kaimolon da'afil Sefer Torah menachos betik." Even though the Sefer Torah is in the covering, Afilo hachi havi ergos tashmish kedusha. Your Aron Kodesh has full status as a tashmish kedusha. And he says beferish in Yeridea. After the Egad Shani, also the kavod Sefer Torah. He used the Gemara, Masha Ein Kain for Svarim bookcases. So the Chavetz Chaim is saying that Sefer Torah, an Aron Kodesh for Sefer Torah, for sure that's something that's made for kavod. That therefore fully has a din of Tashmish Kedusha. So there's no shaila. A Sefer Torah, let's go through the list, the mantle, the gartel, I would say the crown, the breastplate, the yad, all of these are used for kavod of the Sefer Torah. Those are for sure Tashmish Kedusha. On top of that, the Chavetz Chaim is running up the favorish that for sure an Aron that's made for Shmira, that is, excuse me, I keep saying the wrong one. Aron Kodesh is made for kavod. That for sure is a Tashmish Kedusha, and it has to be dealt with properly.
So all
Yes.
the things that you just identified are all things that actually touch the Sefer Torah.
Oh. And you're saying contrast to the Aron?
The Aron touches the base of the Atzechayim, or touching the Kodesh.
It's its home.
Now, Rabbi Berger, again, you bring up a very good point that the Chavetz Chaim later, let's see how much time I'll have to. If you look at the Mishnah Berurah in Yudalid, he makes a point. Kol shenogea mamish b'kedusha b'li hefsek. That has been of Tashmish Kedusha and for kavod. Then you have to debate what happens if something is not directly touching. What does that have to do of? Okay. But so now we've qualified that an Aron Kodesh for sure has a din of Tashmish Kedusha. And I would think one could argue that even if you have a safe inside your Aron Kodesh, but your Aron Kodesh is an elaborate, it's miyuchad, so that's a secondary usage. Is you have that safe for shmira, but really it's built around. It's part of a whole Aron Kodesh. Yeah, that's Tashmish Kedusha. That's the Aron, I would think.
Is there any reason it can't serve a dual purpose? It can't be kavod and shmira?
Well,
Maybe
it
part of
depends.
the shmira is kavod.
Yes and no. You're right. I wouldn't spend money to have a crazy vault if there's nothing in there. But that I'm not sure. That if you just had, if you just had the safe itself, it's an interesting shaila. In other words, you use a safe for an Aron Kodesh. Could you sell that safe to a bank? I wanted to discuss this topic with the posek. I didn't have a chance, so I'm not sure. Okay, so next time you want to sell a safe of an Aron Kodesh to a bank, I'll
Check first.
reach out to me first. But it's an interesting shaila. That part might be viewed just as for shmira versus the rest of the enclosure, that Aron Kodesh, that's for kavod. But it's tricky. I'm not sure. Can you sell, the yeshiva had that shaila. This yeshiva recently sold an Aron Kodesh and a safe. They sold the Aron Kodesh and they dismantled it piece by piece, and the kavodik sent it out. And they sold the safe. But they didn't sell it to the bank. They sold it to a shul, luckily. Now, I want to get back to those original questions we asked. What about crowns? Can I put the crowns into the Sefer, into the Aron Kodesh? Can I put Pasal Sifrei Torah in the Aron Kodesh? Svarim, what are the dinim and all these things? So it's interesting. I'll refer back to my visit to Bnei Brak just a couple weeks ago. We were in Panovich in the Kolo over there. So a gorgeous mahogany Aron. And we walked, after we left the Beis Medrash, we were standing in the coat room, literally, outside the Beis Medrash. And there are hats and jackets everywhere. And I pointed to the guys, we're both saying, look over there. And the side of the coat room, there's a little Aron Kodesh for Nevi'im. Like, you would, like, we're both saying, do you notice that? Like, no. I see coats, hats and jackets everywhere. Oh my gosh, you're right. In the corner, there's like an Aron Kodesh. Now, accessibly wise, it was smart where they put it, because you just go from there right into the Beis Medrash, and you have your nach. There are those who are machmer. One they bring down Nissa Karel, it's of Bnei Brak, but it's not just him. Others in Panovich, they were noeg like that. They would not keep the cloth inside the Aron Kodesh. In the Yeshiva in Queens, we keep the cloth in the bima. I should announce this on the video. But
when I was in Shiva, we
right.
had the Navi inside the Yamud. So the Yamud had two sides, David
right.
and backwards.
So there are those, if you have a cloth, now if anyone knows anything, right, cloth of Nevi'im is very expensive because it's much harder to find, around. It's not the demand is not the same as for Sefer Torah. So it definitely should be kept securely. So there are those that are machmer. They bring B'nzion Abashol, says ideally one should be machmer. However, Dirsha brings that Rav Scheinberg was mater. They found other places. And the Maisa, you see it. In Shoals, you just quoted me one yeshiva. I know Avos Yisrael and Giron Hills. They have inside the Aron Kodesh, they'll have a separate shelf, separate part than the Sefer Torah, but they'll have a shelf spot for the cloth of Nevi'im. So it's machlokas. Is that something you could keep in Aron Kodesh? Or do we say, no, what gives the Aron Kodesh its status as a Tashmish Kedusha? The status comes from the Sefer Torah. So maybe using it for something less than that's degrading. Shouldn't do that. What about putting the crowns in? Not so simple. So Rabbi Yashav and Rav Nissa Karel, it's there were makel. Now Rav Nissa Karel says machmer with a nach, but he's makel with a crown. I think that
specifically for the Torah itself.
Right. Because since a crown itself is a tashmish kedusha, so that's chashivas for the Sefer Torah itself, that is more easily able to keep inside an aron. But a navi, which is its own entity, that's not serving as a tashmish kedusha of the Sefer Torah. Okay, they're laid in tandem. But so that some are more machmir to keep that outside. What about putting, we mentioned before, a pushka in the aron? So the Chavetz Chaim himself writes about that in Siman Shin Lamed Daled, that ideally that should not be put there. And if you see people, sometimes there's, money in the pushka, people want to hide it, there's security. Again, not so pashut to do. I think there might be, there's a difference. Sometimes you have an Aron Kodesh where you could have drawers and other areas alongside it. That's different. Then there you're really just saying the Aron Kodesh is the place where I keep the Sefer Torah itself. You have other drawers, even if it's quote unquote under the paroches, but if it's a separate entity, there you have more room to put your kinnis and put your other things. But inside the Aron Kodesh itself, not so pashut. Now, you brought up before, it's a good gabbai, that in some shoals, I'm not sure all shoals, some shoals they have a minhag, now in Simchas Torah, when they take out all the Sefer Torah, to put a chumash inside the Aron Kodesh. So that, now what's the idea behind it?
Should be empty.
It shouldn't be empty. But according to what we just learned, that's not so pashut. Because on the one hand, I hear there's some inyan, it shouldn't be empty. Okay? But on the other hand,
It's not safe.
it's not a Sefer Torah. Could you normally put a chumash inside the Aron Kodesh?
The Aron is open during this time, no?
Right. But still, you're laying something over there. You're putting it inside that Aron. You normally wouldn't put a chumash there. So you have to know, not so pasha, this inyan, oh, the Aron Kodesh is empty, okay, but you can't just put something in there that, it might be better to keep a crown in the Aron than...
There probably are crowns in there.
Huh?
There's crowns normally in there. They're still in there.
Good. No, usually it's on the Sefer Torah. On Sefer Torah sometimes.
I don't know about
Huh?
that.
Apostle Sefer Torah?
You're asking in general, could they put in or Sefer Torah? Huh.
We pull out the puzzle Sefer Torah
Yeah.
on Sefer Torah.
So I didn't find anyone directly talking about. I didn't see the post them talk specifically about that shayla about the Apostle Sefer Torah. I think it's pasha you could Shevrei Luchos, right? Is that even though that Sefer Torah doesn't have the full dinim of Kedusha Sefer Torah now because it's puzzle, but you still have to machabed it, and that you've definitely seen in shows all over is they have puzzle Sefer Torah
Absolutely.
inside the Aron, so that seems to be okay. Right? The mon, you're right. That's if to say is Xeris Akasuf. That's in tennis mon put in there. But circling back a little bit, it always bothers me a little bit. Sometimes you'll find, let's go on Sukkot, where someone will have a gorgeous, gorgeous silver esrog case. And his esrog, he got a good deal, let's just say. Your silver esrog case is worth much, much more than the esrog itself. So I always scratch my head a little bit on that. What's the ikar? What's the tafel? The main thing is the mitzvah, the object using for the mitzvah, the silver. Okay, it's a once-in-a-lifetime gift. You got a silver esrog thing, okay? But really the idea should be is that one should honor the object for the mitzvah, but it shouldn't outdo the mitzvah. The mitzvah object's the main thing, not the covering on top of it. It's a hiddur mitzvah, but the real hiddur mitzvah is with the object itself. So it was bothering me, right? I don't know of any Sefer Torah that cost $1 million to write. Sofrim would be Kanan Ahara doing quite well if they're able to write $1 million Sefer Torah. I don't know of any.
The tiny ones.
Right? The tiny ones are $1 million? No, they're very expensive. They might be $100,000, maybe $200,000. But
much harder to write.
Yeah, huh?
Bigger ones.
It's highly unlikely that it's reaching up to
yeah, I would think it's probably right.
120.
Huh?
120.
120. Yeah, it's always like that. We'll find out. I'm sure someone's listening will give us a quote. But it's not $1 million. It's definitely not $10 million. So it's like, bothered me a little bit, like this idea of, wow, we have a $10 million in Kodesh. But are your Sifrei Torah and Aron Kodesh worth $10 million? Is that itself like an over-the-top expenditure? But I think you do see from here that there's a big difference between those two cases. By a mitzvah, we said, the mitzvah itself, and you have a thing of tashmish of the mitzvah. That's not tashmish kedusha. Much lower madrega. Here, anything you do for kavod of a Sefer Torah That's called Tashmishi Kedusha. It's a totally different status. So I could hear the chashivas. I could hear the reason for one, to honor the Torah. It's a beautiful way to honor the Torah. Avada, of course, we should have beautiful Sefer Torah. But a way to honor the Torah is to have a beautiful Aron Kodesh housing it. That Aron Kodesh is Tashmishi Kedusha. Those crowns, beautiful mantles, that's all Tashmishi Kedusha. And there definitely is a good basis to beautify it as much as one can. And I was debating if I should say this story. I'll tell the story. You think about an Aron Kodesh. This is not part of the halachic part of the share. This is just interesting words of inspiration because I don't know when you're allowed to do this. But there was a dramatic story that happened just before I came to yeshiva, where Reb Henoch had really, post the war and post, he was somebody. Well, it's funny, he never had children, and he didn't really have relatives. His father was nifter young. He had his mother, he had his aunt, and he had a couple cousins. So one cousin married the Rosh Hashiva, David Harris, Shlita. Another one married Mordechai Trapper, Zatzal, Mashgiach in the yeshiva. And Mordechai Trapper had a lot of health issues through the years. He had his son donate him a kidney before renewal and all that. He had some other major, and there was a point where basically the doctor said it's a matter of hours. And dramatically, the Henoch went in the middle of the city, saying to him, in the middle of the city, he opened up the Aron Kodesh and started out. Like in front of the whole yeshiva, all of a sudden in the middle of Tehillim, the Rosh Hashiva runs up there and opens the Aron Kodesh. And he says some tefillos and he cried out to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not going to repeat the words that he said. But an Aron Kodesh is such a special place. You find people sometimes on after they get an aliyah, they'll go up to the Aron Kodesh to kiss the Aron Kodesh. A Rav, before he speaks, will kiss the parochas of the Aron Kodesh. Like, it's a very, very unique and special place in the shul, in the Beis Medrash. And we were talking before about the kavod for a shul in general. It could be the more we appreciate what an Aron Kodesh is and the housing of the Sefer Torah there, the more it will inspire us in our davening and in our learning. Such a special place. It's our Kodesh Kodashim that we have in the world today. And Be'ezus Hashem, through learning these halachas and understanding it better, should help all our tefillos and our learning to be more impactful, to go right up to Shemayim. Very much. Everyone should have a wonderful, wonderful week. Next week should be regular. Okay. Yeah.
Have the Holocaust in Torah that we know is a puzzle.
In the hallway.
And
I know. Oh, it's in the hall room? Or it's in the hallway?
It's a case on the wall.
Yes. Thank you.
So, technically, it's an Aron.
Yeah.
Level of that Aron.
Talk about that too. I wonder. That's a whole show on itself.
No kosher Sefer Torah ever went there.
Right. It's also wondering because they have it open, right? I've seen it, right?
It's glass, yeah.
The safer itself is open. Right? No, it's closed.
We spoke about yesterday.
I was just unfortunately in a
last
foreign place. Boca, they have a wedding venue there. There they have one. They have like a Holocaust remembrance. It's part of the show. and they have like a Sefer Torah
Well, I said people-
there, and there they have it all.
Should
we rip this out?
Lash out this one. Because we're crazy people and we're unqualified to do this, you know?
So,
I mean,
I think
when
it's
it's
just
in a
kind of
shul,
funny
You're right,
because
that has
the
been
Torah
a
rub of the
goes to
shul is
3
going to
people.
determine what it
Not
is.
3,000.
Right.
Three people, not
But it's
3,000.
still the
Yeah,
price.
Torah.
3 people means they have to have enough for 6 people
Right.
of every item.
Right. Exactly.
That's what they
Yaakov.
Oh.
Okay.
No, Aron Kodesh says.
Someone have to turn this off?
It's a,
We're still going with this?
the article they were talking about this was that the one from when it was about Hisharan or when it were
Oh, the Yeshiva's one?
yeah.
No.
I'm saying the first one you're talking about.
No, they
Right
they
here
had
is
it
red.
in
I don't know
71st
what that
Street.
means. Recording or if it's off.
Because